Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of 285 DIY, Elevate Your Home Improvement Game. I'm your host, Dosha Boylan from Handyman Connection, and today we're diving into a topic that every DIY enthusiast will find useful: drywall repair. Drywall damage is a common issue in homes, and whether you're dealing with small dents or larger holes, we can help you. In this episode, we'll go over the types of drywall damage, their causes, and walk through step-by-step repair procedures so you can achieve seamless results. So let's get started. First, we need to talk about the different types of drywall damage that you might encounter and what typically causes them. This knowledge will help you identify the problem and determine the best course of action for repairs. So what type of issues do we find? The biggest issue we find is small holes, either nail pops or screw holes. These are common in homes where picture frames and shelving are frequently moved around. Small holes can also be caused by nails that come loose and push the drywall outward, called like a nail pop. Those can also be the result of drywall settling or shifting, and they're normal. Number two, is cracks. These are especially found near windows and doors and are often due to the house settling over time. They can also be a signifier that you have structural movement. Or could be caused by humidity changes or poor drywall insulation. Number three is dents and dings. Dents often occur when something impacts the drywall surface, maybe like a piece of furniture you're moving or an accidental bump. These are usually superficial and relatively easy to repair. Four is medium to large holes. These are the type of holes that can be caused by accidents such as doorknobs banging against the wall, rough housing, or even an unintended blow or elbow through the wall. They require more attention and a bit more skill to fix. Number five is water damage. This often results in discolored, softened, or bubbling drywall. It's caused by leaks from plumbing or roof issues. Before repairing any water-damaged drywall, you must fix the underlying moisture problem, which we'll not cover in this episode. Number six is corner bead damage. On the corners in your house, there is a metal or plastic corner bead installed at the external corners, and this can get damaged from impact or poor installation. It can cause cracks and chips around those corner areas. We're not going to dive into corner bead damage replacement in this episode because it is a high-skill DIY project. So now we've identified the types of drywall damage. Let's move on to the fun part, actually repairing them. I'll take you through the steps to repair small holes, cracks, and dents to medium and large holes. So make sure you have your tools ready and your materials ready. So let's start with the basic tools and materials you'll need. As far as tools go, you should need a utility knife, a putty knife that's 4 or 6 inches, a sanding sponge or sandpaper that has medium to fine grit. You might need a drywall saw for the larger repairs, a drill if you're working on larger repairs, a tape measure, paintbrush, and roller for touch-up painting. What type of materials do you need? You need drywall joint compound, also known as mud. You need drywall tape, either mesh or paper. You need drywall texture spray. It comes in a can, and you'll need that for cracks and medium to larger holes. You will also need a drywall patch kit if you're going to do medium or large holes, or just a large piece of drywall. Drywall screws if you're replacing that larger one, and then you'll need primer and paint for finishing. And then as far as safety goes, you should have a dust mask and safety goggles. Always work safely. So if you're going to repair the first type of item that we talked about, small holes or dents, here is the process for that. It's pretty easy. We've got it down to 5 steps, and you should be able to do this with the tools and materials that we talked about. So you want to prepare the area if needed. You may need to use a utility knife to clean up the edges of the small hole. There could be loose bits of drywall or paper. You want to trim those away. Secondly, you want to take that putty knife and apply a small amount of joint compound over the hole or the dent, and you're going to smooth it out evenly. For small holes, 1 coat may be enough. and then you want to allow this to dry. The third step is sanding. Once the compound is dry, sand the area lightly using a sanding sponge or sandpaper until it smooths and blends with the surrounding wall. Then you want to wipe away the dust with a damp cloth. And then repeat if necessary. You can apply a second coat of joint compound if needed, and then sand again after it dries. And then finally, priming and painting. You want to prime the patched area, especially if it's a larger area. And once the primer dries, you want to touch up with matching paint for a seamless finish. So that gets us through number 1. Number 2 is to repair cracks. So here you're going to use that utility knife to cut a V-shaped groove along the length of the crack. This helps the joint compound adhere better. So that's your first step. Your second step is going to be to apply drywall tape. So you're going to place the mesh or paper drywall over the crack. The tape basically reinforces the joint compound and prevents the crack from reappearing. Then you're going to use that putty knife that you have and apply the joint compound, a thin layer, over the tape, and you're going to want to feather the edges to blend into the wall. Then you want to allow this to dry. Then your fourth step is to lightly sand the first coat, then apply a second coat of compound, feathering the edges again, and sand smooth once it's dry. Spray texture can be used to apply texture to the area. This is more art than science, and the application could be tricky to get it to match surrounding areas. Follow the instructions listed on the can of texture that you purchase. And then finally, you want to finish with priming and painting. You want to prime that repaired area, and then after that's dry, you want to paint the area, feathering it out to try to get it to blend. Medium to large holes are a little bit more difficult because you want to, first of all, use a drywall saw to cut a clean square hole around the damaged area and remove any loose debris. You really want a nice clean cut. You don't want to, especially if it's an elbow through a wall and it's kind of circular, you're going to want to make sure that we square that off, because you're going to want to measure and cut a patch to fit that area. You want to cut a piece of new drywall slightly larger than the hole you just cut out and place the patch over the hole and trace around it. Then you want to cut along these lines to create the perfect fit. If you are on the advanced side, one thing that you can do is actually take the drywall particles off and leave the paper so that the paper goes over the outside of the wall. That's a little tip that drywall people use a lot. You're going to want to apply that patch. If the hole is larger than 4 inches, you need a support piece, like a scrap piece of wood behind the hole, and then you're going to screw the drywall patch in place. Then you want to place the drywall tape around the edges of the patch, making sure that you cover the screw holes. Now we're going to go back to doing that, applying the joint compound. So you're going to use that putty knife to apply the joint compound over all the tape and the patch, feathering the edges to blend in with the existing wall, and then allow that to dry. Then we're back to that sand and repeat step. So you want to sand the first coat smoothly. Then you're going to apply a second coat of compound, allow it to dry, and sand it again. Spray texture can be used to apply texture to this area, and remember, it's more of an art than a science, and that application can be kind of tricky. And then what you're going to do is you're going to finish it off by priming and painting the repaired area to match the rest of the wall. So I like to give tips once we go through the DIY part. So here are a few tips to ensure your drywall repairs are seamless and professional looking. Feathering is key. Feathering the edges of your joint compound and texture out the surrounding wall and prevent noticeable bumps. Patience with drying times. Don't rush the drying process. Let each coat of compound dry completely before sanding or applying another coat. Your sanding technique, you want to use light circular motions when sanding, and it's better to sand lightly multiple times than to sand aggressively and damage the wall. Dust control. You want to use a dust mask when sanding to protect your lungs from the fine particles, and consider using a damp sanding sponge to minimize dust. Texture. This comes with practice, and it can be the hardest part of the repair. Go slow and don't put on too much. Wipe clean quickly if you make a mistake and try again. Touch-up paint. Always have a bit of the original wall paint handy for touch-ups. If the wall's been painted for a while, it might have faded, so you're going to want to do a paint match so that you get the color matched as closely as possible. And that wraps up our episode for this week on drywall repair. Remember, practice makes perfect, so don't be discouraged if your first few attempts aren't flawless. The key is to take your time and follow each step carefully. Before you know it, you'll be patching holes and cracks like a pro. If you found this helpful, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page at 285DIY for more tips and tricks. Don't forget to leave a review there and share the podcast with your fellow DIY enthusiasts. We can also be found every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on Conifer Radio. And if you decide that you don't want to go down the path of repairing your own drywall, you can always give Handyman Connection a call. Our number is 303-968-1112. If you have ideas for upcoming episodes, please feel free to give us an email at 285diy@gmail.com. Happy repairing, everyone. So until next time, this is Dosha Boylan signing off from Handyman Connection. Keep elevating your home improvement game.